Within the Fairly Odd Parents, there are many very curious and quite powerful objects, so today, as we are not here to see what is the most powerful object of the Fairly Odd Parents, we will analyze several objects that appeared in the original series, whether they are the desires, inventions of some character or objects from the magical world, to see which is the most powerful of all. So well, without anything else to say, let's start. First, let's begin with some foods that are presented in the series like Mrs. Turner's meatloaf are seen in the chapter called Food Fight. The origin of these meatloafs is quite simple, since let's say they were created by Timey's mom, since her food was so bad that came to life. The truth is that we didn't see much of these in the chapter, since they only appear at the end where Mr. Turner becomes the king of these meatloafs, but from what we see they have quite sharp teeth and some tentacles all over the body. But as I say, we couldn't see what they do exactly, and that's why they remain as the weakest food in the series. We continue with Cosmo's lemonade that could be seen in the chapter called Nectar of the Odds. In this chapter, we see that Timey tries to sell lemonade to go to see Crash Nebula on ice. Timey uses Cosmo's sweat since it gives a good lemonade flavor, but aside from this, it also gains the ability to grant wishes to anyone who drinks it. The wishes don't seem to be attached to the rules of fairies, although this is never made clear, and so this would be a pretty powerful drink that would certainly compete quite well with other objects from the more varied section. But for now it has the second place from the food section. And we would arrive with the number 1 spot in this section, which would be the magic muffin. And we can see this in the episodes of Abracatastrophe, where Timey turns 1-year-old without revealing that he has magical godparents, and as a gift or prize they give him this muffin, which apart from knowing horrible has the ability to fulfill any wish that is asked for without prohibitions of the magic rules. With that said, it automatically becomes one of the most powerful objects in the entire series, since there is no type of prohibits with the wish that can be asked, and not only that, since this object can grant more than one wish as long as it does not run out, so you could take small bites to ask for more wishes or ask for it to be infinite, like for example the pizza in Gravity Falls. The disadvantage is that apart from the fact that it tastes horrible, and that if it runs out, the wishes run out, we also have the factor that anyone can use this morphine to make a wish. So if it falls into the wrong hands, it would be fatal, and some may think that this item is too powerful to just be in the section of food, and that I should put it in the section of the most varied objects of the series. So that you are happy. Apart from being the most powerful food in the entire series, it would also be in the top 3 of the most powerful. Finishing with the food section. Then let's begin to see which is the most powerful wand in the series, starting with the emergency magic wand was seen in the episode called For Emergencies Only of Season 6, where Wanda gives this wand to Timey so that he can grant his own wishes without the need for them to be near. This wand works like a normal one, being able to grant Timey any wishes he wants as long as he doesn't break the rules. So we have to say that it's a pretty powerful object. The only limitation and why it remains the weakest of all the wands in this series would be that can only grant 10 wishes is why Wanda gives it to him. He gave Timey as an object that he should only use in case of emergency. But instead Timey uses it for pure stupidities, and by not having his magical godparents he ends up getting into troubles, so for only getting 10 wishes for me he is left behind the next wands in the series. These would be devices quite similar to the wands of the fairies, only that they are shaped like a cell phone, and that the pixies are little elf businessmen who use magic to do business. I put them at the bottom of this section since they do grant wishes and all that. But thanks to the attitude of the pixies, they cannot grant wishes that are fun or that have that kind of intention. Also that each of them goes through a lot of paperwork before it can be fulfilled, and for that simple reason it is over here. The anti-wand are used by the anti-fairies, who are quite recurring villains of the series. These are quite similar to their good counterpart. only that these are used more during Friday the 13th to cause pain and misery. It seems that these have attack functions and can also generate objects. But as they are only used for the aforementioned purpose, and as I cannot find much more information about these wands, I leave them in second place. In the first place, we have the wands that we could see throughout the series that they would be the fairy wands, and these would be a main tool that every fairy needs to be able to use their magic. As Wanda mentions, the power of a wand is almost unlimited, and that is why you have to be careful with what is desired because it could end very badly. In fact, for that same reason, there are rules which regulate the use of magic wands that will be deactivated if a fairy wants to grant a wish that breaks these rules, which for me is one of the biggest disadvantages that these wands have. Apart from that is also that the power of these wands comes directly from the Great Wand of the magic world. So these are useless if the Great Wand loses energy, as we see happening in one chapter. Even so, with all this, I feel that they are the most powerful that we see during the entire series, and as a fact, within all the fairy wands, obviously the most powerful would be Jorge's, as he is the commander of the fairies. And now we go with the rest of the objects to see which is the most powerful, starting with Philip the Nickel was seen in quite a few chapters of the series, and this would be a penny or a coin that Cosmo found around. Cosmo seems to have an obsession with this coin point that he treats her as if she were alive. But it's just a coin, it's not like it can do much. The paternal battering ram, as its name says, is a battering ram which is used by Dimmesdale's parents to knock down doors or walls of their children's room and enter. According to Timmy's father, this is the latest cry of the fashion for aggressive parenting, and basically this is the function of the object, which could serve as a weapon to harm someone, but in the series it is only used to knock down doors or structures without permission. Now let's see the memory erasers. Are devices very similar to those we can see in Men in Black, and just like in their appearance they would work almost the same. These are a tool used by the fairies to erase the memory of the minds of the godchildren who lose their magical godparents or humans in general who have discovered it. With just pressing a button, this object launches a flash which may be able to erase someone's memory immediately, as we see in the chapter where Jorge appears. They use it several times to erase the Coker's memory, and so he forgets that he ever had magical godparents. The truth is that it sounds quite useful to erase someone's memory, but this object apparently only erases memories related to the fairies, so it could only be used to prevent if someone remembers it or knows of its existence. Then that's why I leave it here. The body swapping device was seen in the chapter called Presto Change O. In the chapter, we see that Timmy asks for this device, which has the function of changing bodies with the person it touches. So this device has a fairly basic operation, and in the episode we see that Timmy changes bodies with people to benefit himself. But it ends up going wrong as always, since he switched bodies with Professor Coker. So I would say that this object can become quite useful depending on who you switch bodies with, so that's why I leave it here. The appearance simulator is a rather sophisticated artifact that the Yucatecanians created in order to hide their true form from the world. As we see in several chapters, Mark uses this object, and to transform he has to turn the central part of the device and choose what he wants to transform. This can take the form of almost anything, being a very useful tool to camouflage, since, as I say, it can transform into any object and go unnoticed. The advantage here is that if the device breaks down or Mark receives some kind of damage, the object can stop working and leave him exposed. So I think its power can be mitigated easily. We arrived with the Wando, which is a machine that Cosmo creates to be able to combine objects or things, and in the chapter where it appears we see that there are several combinations like that of Cosmo and Wanda or Timmy and a skateboard. So this machine could be quite useful to obtain interesting abilities depending on the object with which it is combined with the one that enters the machine. For example, Coker combines with several things in the chapter, becoming a fairly powerful cheese monster, until Timmy stops likewise combining with various objects to be able to defeat him. So as I say, this is an object that can be taken advantage of a lot, if the one that enters the machine is combined with a useful object. We move on to the shrinking suit, which was seen in the chapter called Tiny Timey, and this would be a kind of armor created by Cosmo and Wanda so that Timmy can protect himself from the dangers of the microscopic world. And as its name says, this suit has the ability to become small, either the size of an ant or even so small that we can see multicellular organisms, so the user of this object can avoid attacks by making itself very small or use it to attack its rival from the inside as Tim did with Vicky. But this suit not only has this ability, since it can also fly. In addition to that, it has multiple tools that can be used to defend itself from any threat. Is not made very clear that it also performs in combat, but I think it would do quite well, and I think that is why I leave it here. We would continue with the voodoo dolls, which we can see in the chapter called You Do. The function of these dolls is basically that depending on who the You Do doll is, you could control what it does and everything it says, since what happens to the doll would happen to the real person. Wanda explains that this type of dolls are very dangerous because if you don't control what you do with the person, they could get really hurt, like what almost happened to Timmy in the chapter. So we have to say that this is a kind of control object which is quite powerful, since you can control almost every aspect of a person if you have a doll like this. So this seems to me to be a rather powerful and equally dangerous object, and I believe that for those reasons it earns this place. The suit of Dark powers was seen in the chapter called The End of University. In this chapter, Dark Laser lends this suit to Timmy, telling him that with it, he can obtain dark powers and do whatever he wants. Then when he puts it on, Timmy obtains telekinetic powers with which he can control objects or people to move them at will, which could be very useful in combat. Apart from that, the dark powers of the suit also offer control with which Timmy controls Vicky and Trixie to do what he wants. Apparently this one also has many more uses that are written in the user manual, but we don't get to see them, and it is assumed that the dark powers have the advantage that Timmy doesn't have to follow the rules that magic has. So this suit offers pretty good and interesting abilities, but for not knowing what else it can do, I leave it here. The time belt is used by Timmy in the future, where Vicky dominates the whole world, the chapters of Channel Chasers. And this one, as you could guess by the name, has the ability to travel to the past or also to the future. Although this was not shown in the chapter, it is not used too much anymore, that Timid from the future only uses to get to the past and then returns, but since it is a kind of time machine, it already has its certain power, since you could travel to the past to avoid something or things like that. The only disadvantage apart from that, if you change the past, you can greatly affect your future, because if it gets damaged or something like that, the user will return to the place where he is originally, which at least to me does not seem so bad, since at least it returns you to your time and does not leave you there trapped. And for this simple reasons, and because we did not see it in action so much, I leave the time belt here. The time scooter, as its name says, is a kind of motorcycle which has the ability to travel in time and was seen in the chapter called Father Time and also in others. This is a white scooter with a clock on the front in which you have to insert the year where you want it to take you, and it will advance or go back depending on whether you want to travel to the future or the past. So with this object, the user has the ability to travel wherever he pleases and change or modify the past or the future, and apart from that, it would also have the advantage that it can be used as a mobility object. The disadvantage here would be the one I mentioned with the time belt, since there is a high risk of ruining the future if something important is changed in the past, but well, apart from that, I leave this object here. We could see the magic clocks in the chapter called the Yabu, where Timmy wants a clock with which he can repeat his day, so that it is not so bad. Then Cosmo transforms into this magic watch, which has the ability to travel to a point in the past immediately to repeat some event. Throughout the chapter, Timmy uses this watch to repeat his day and benefit since he knows what will happen and maybe in function. This will be quite similar to the time belt or the scooter that I mentioned before, but I feel that this one is even easier to use and can also become more useful. Since time travel or moment replay is almost instantaneous, so for me it opens up more possibilities. The advantage here is that if Cosmo Wanda gets tired of repeating so much time, because this one would be left without powers, but apart from that, for me, this is the most powerful time travel object in the series. The Crocker staff is a device created by Professor Coker which captures the fairies and has the function of granting wishes. This appears in the chapters of Abra Catastrophe, and Coker uses this staff to spread terror throughout Dimsdale by casting energy rays. Quite powerful to damage his opponents. As I said, apparently this one can also grant wishes, since in one part it freezes some children or makes them carry shrimps, turning it into an object with a lot of power. The disadvantage here is that it depends on fairies, so that this can work because without them it would only use to hit. I think this object fits well here, although I don't know what you think. Let me know in the comments what you think. And we'll get to the rules, because if you watch the series you know that this is a magic book that contains all the rules of the fairy world. That both they and their godchildren must follow these rules to avoid serious problems or breaking any kind of law of the land that could harm others in some way. If the rules are not followed, the godchild will lose his magical godparents with all the benefits that this entails. And in fact, this object, we could say that it did counter to the center of Crocker, since that's how Timmy managed to defeat it. And maybe some think that this object should be higher in the video since it has a certain power, but at least I consider that it being an object that in itself cannot be used, and that only affects fairies and their godchildren, it could not go any further. So I leave that this book within the magical world is quite powerful, but let's say that it ends there, and that's why I leave it here. The magic printer was seen in the chapter called Hard Copy, and as you guessed it, it's a magic printer that has the ability to print anything it scans and make it real. In the episode, we can see that Timmy prints toys, food, and practically anything he wants. So this printer will produce anything you want. Scan it and make it a reality. With that said, I believe that this machine has a very large potential, since whoever owns it has almost infinite possibilities of printing and doing whatever he wants. This machine has almost unlimited power, since the only disadvantages are that first you have to be careful with what you print because it could be dangerous, and second is that if the ink in the photocopier runs out, then you won't be able to print more things or they will print poorly. But apart from that, as I say, this machine has a very big potential, and that's why I leave it in this position. We continue with Norm's magic lamp that we can see in several chapters of the series. This magic lamp works like any a genie's lamp that we have seen in the movies, since Norm will come out of it and will grant 3 wishes without rules to whoever rubs it. I don't think I need to explain how broken this is, since practically Norm's master, or whoever rubbed the lamp, can ask for whatever he wants and even ask for more wishes. In a certain way we could compare it a bit with the magic muffin, since both offer wishes without rules, but here a genie grants them to you. But this is the only disadvantage that I see to this object and why it is not higher than the next one. Since the truth is that Norm is a bit of a picky eater or a bit of a bottle sitter. So if he doesn't like his master, he could perhaps spoil his wishes like he did with Timmy. To solve this, you would have to think very carefully about what you want and be very specific with Norm, so that he the wish perfectly without the problems that can be had with Norm. We have to accept that this is a fairly powerful object, but let me know in the comments what you think and where you would leave this object. And we arrive with what, apart from the muffin, I consider one of the most powerful objects of all the series, since it offers quite a few things that we already saw in other objects in this video. And yes, as you already saw, obviously I am talking about the magic controls that we saw in the Channel Chasers episodes. These magic controls were a wish that Timmy asked for, to be able to enter television programs and become part of them. And although this was the initial desire, these controls turned out to be even more powerful, since in a certain way, they have a very large control of reality. First of all, we have that of you can put it on the television and be part of the infinite worlds of the programs or cartoons. Second is that how you can see in these also allows the user to take objects from the same programs to use them in their world, which is quite broken depending on the program or the weapon that you take the object from. There are also the functions of control of space and time, where by pressing the fast forward button you can make time go faster or make it go backwards with the rewind button, and even pause it with the pause button. It also seems that these can be modified at the user's convenience to become weapons, since we saw that Vicky and Timmy use them as laser swords. So in general, there are quite a few things that can be done with these controls, which are clear to us that they are very powerful. And that is why for me they are in this place. But as I told you with the muffin, let me know in the comments for you. Which one is the most powerful object of them all? I will be reading them all, since I am interested in knowing what you think. If you want more videos of the Fairly Odd Parents, remember to leave your like and also subscribe to the channel. And well, see you later, bye.